Tens of thousands of generations of human beings came before us so that in this day and age, we can reap the benefits of all of the technologies that were developed long times ago and are still being developed now, and live our comfortable lives. Because even in those harsh worlds where birth was dangerous, mothers very often died during pregnancy and childbirth, the infants themselves died like half of the time, people still struggled in order to create families. People still put in the really honestly Herculean effort that was necessary in order to keep the human race going. But nowadays, plenty of young men in red pill MGTOW circles are just leaving that by the wayside. Instead of starting their own families, they're focusing on themselves. This is branded as masculine independence, but I'll go into in this video why this is just a mask for base cowardice. MGTOW bros talk a ton about a man's purpose. I'm not chasing women, I'm not chasing marriage, I'm not getting into this trap, I'm not falling for the Matrix's ploys, because I'm gonna chase my own purpose, and I'm gonna go after my own goals. Okay, great. Chasing purpose, living a life that's purposeful, I'm all for that. What's your purpose? In most of these cases, the purpose that these MGTOW bros are aspiring towards chasing is simply themselves. Creating financial security for themselves. Building their own bodies so that they can be proud of and feel good about themselves. Developing their positive habits and their mental faculties and all these things for themselves so that they can enjoy themselves. Themselves. This is how they market products to women and to men these days when the product is self-improvement, but especially in female marketing. I point to the example, which I've used multiple times in the past, of L'Oréal Paris, a shampoo brand that makes like skin lotions as well and stuff like that for women, where they have ads, the ads that say, "Hi, it's me, your skin, I'm really dry, help me." They brand themselves by saying, "You're worth it." This is an example of you marketing, where they praise the viewer, where they say, do this for yourself, focus on yourself, things like that, in order to get people to buy things. And it's not really any grand mystery why this gets people to buy things, because it feeds into their ego. It makes people feel good about themselves, which is a very, very effective marketing strategy, which is why I think so many self-improvement influencers use it. But all it does is really, at the end of the day, appeal to your basest nature, appeal to your ego and your sense of wanting to feel like I am the most important thing, so I should simply be focusing on myself, and in a way, wanting to be free from all responsibility to focus on anything but yourself, on anyone else. And for this reason, I think that this purpose that MGTOW bros propose, just gaining money so that you can buy your Bugattis that you want and all the little things that you want to have for yourself, and building your muscles and all of these things that by the time you're dead, nobody's going to care about, aren't truly purposeful. But you know what is purposeful? Having kids is an extremely ancient and natural desire for humans in general, and for men no less than women. A lot of people act as if it's more of a desire for women, whereas men just want to sleep around with as many people as they want. That's a thing about modern men and modern women as well. But naturally, men want children just as much as women do. In many ancient biblical writings, for example, when a man, just as much as when a woman, can't have kids because, they're together, either the man's infertile or the woman's infertile, and they're praying to be able to have kids, there's complete despair. You can read biblical texts, the Torah, when people can't have kids in the ancient world, and it's not just part of ancient world culture. I think this is something more natural, given that you see it across almost every single culture except modern Western culture. They're filled with complete despair. Besides being the will of God, having children allows you to create something that will last beyond yourself, that can last basically till the end of time, as you pass thousands and thousands and thousands of generations, like how we passed from the beginning of the human race until now. It allows you to leave a legacy that lasts long beyond your own death. Because if all you do is amass wealth and do things for yourself, improve yourself just to feel better about me, you're gonna die. Nobody's going to come to your funeral except your online red pill friends. They'll come by laptop. You put the laptop on the funeral chair. They'll watch your coffin on video being lowered into your grave as they shed a digital tear. But having children allows you to leave a mark on the world that lasts forever. People will be at your funeral And people will be around you as you reach older age and realize that you actually do want people around and you're not that cool just being a lone wolf, alpha, sigma, whatever the hell you think you are. And instead of just being a blip on the radar of time, now you're a dynasty. Now you're a bloodline that will last to the end of humanity, theoretically. Out of all of the things that you could create, out of all of the projects that you could possibly focus on, I can't think of any that would be more purposeful, important, or worthwhile than that. So given all of those things, given all of those incredibly positive reasons to have children, why do so many young MGTOW bros leave it completely by the wayside, reject it in favor of just focusing on themselves and their goals and their purpose, whatever that purpose is? The main reason? Because of the risks that are associated with having kids and getting married in this day and age. 50% of marriages end in divorce. I've heard that thrown out so many times. And honestly, that sounds accurate because I've seen a lot of divorced people. A lot of these risks that MGTOW bros talk about, a lot of these realities of how modern women are, how they don't treat you well, how they're very entitled, a lot of these things are accurate. I don't think that in their diagnosis of the way things are currently, MGTOW bros are wrong. I think they're generally quite accurate. Some of the stuff they say about women does take it to a certain extreme. Like, Andrew Tate, if you see my short that I made about this, you'll see Andrew Tate talk about how all women are evil. That's just not true to any greater extent than all men are evil. But overall, the complaints that MGTOW bros have with how things currently are completely valid complaints. They completely reflect reality. I am not arguing against those complaints because I agree with them. However, what I am arguing against is the idea that because of these realities, you should abandon having kids. You should abandon leaving your legacy because of the risks involved. First of all, 50% risk. That's a 50% chance that you are never going to get divorced, that you'll never deal with any of these issues. And even let's say you do get divorced, because, to be fair, it is likely enough that you do have to think about it. You can reduce the likelihood a lot by marrying within religious communities, not marrying based on love, but based on purpose, things like that. Marrying the right woman and not just the woman that turns you on. There are a lot of ways you can reduce that likelihood. However, it is a significant enough likelihood in this day and age that it's completely reasonable to think about it. So what happens if you have kids with a woman and then you get divorced? Let's take the worst case scenario. She takes you to the cleaners. You lose all custody of your kids and you lose tons of money and you just really get screwed over by her and her lawyer. That really sucks. That's really rough and it happens to too many men. But is this worse? You have two options. You're on your own. You have no kids out there anywhere in the world. You have a ton of money. You're chasing your goals for yourself because you're worth it. You're in a ton of L'Oreal Paris ads. You're such a successful model for women's hair products. Okay. And on the other hand, you just got screwed over. You lost a lot of money. You lost custody. You maybe see each of your kids once a year, but they exist. Your lineage is out there somewhere in the world. Are you seriously telling me that at the end of the day, that this is worse? That when you are lying on your deathbed, you're going to regret having kids instead of having become a more successful L'Oreal Paris model? Are you seriously going to tell me that? Also, I think in itself there's something very cowardly and weak and just not very manly about abandoning ever leaving a legacy, abandoning ever continuing your bloodline, abandoning what is most deep down, whether or not he's willing to admit it, important to a man, just how God made us. We value this incredibly. You have a kid, that connection is completely instinctual in the way a connection with no one else is. You're going to abandon that and you're going to simply allow your bloodline to end after all of the toil that your ancestors put into continuing it. After all of the near scrapes and all of the suffering that was went through, it's going to end with you because you don't want to accept any risks. You don't want to accept the risk that you might get screwed over. When throughout most of human history, every single day was a risk that you were going to get killed, which was a pretty significant risk. Take all the business ideas that these MGTOW bros have. I'm going to start a bunch of faces YouTube channels. I'm going to start all these businesses. I'm going to make millions of dollars. What kind of businessman ever succeeds without taking on lots of financial risk? Those that don't succeed, which is higher than a 50% chance in the business world, especially these days, are bankrupted. It's not just being taken to the cleaners in divorce court. They're bankrupted. They get screwed completely. And they can never succeed if they're not willing to take on that risk and try and beat the odds anyways. And that's about something far, far less important than your legacy, than your bloodline. And for something this important, for the most important thing in your life, this specifically, you're not willing to risk anything for it. That's just weak. They also complain that women these days are too modernized, to this, to that. They're too entitled, they're too bratty, they want you to be this way, but actually they want you to be this way, and they don't communicate clearly. These women themselves aren't worth starting families with. I agree. In the majority of cases, among modern, secularized, irreligious women, that's completely true. If you go down to a bar anywhere in like DC and you pick up some girl in cut-off shorts and a camisole and you try and start a family with her, yeah, that's going to be a really, really crappy idea. She's probably not going to want to start a family with you anyways. You're just going to want a one-night stand. But if you just say there's no good women out there, there's nobody I can find that I would be willing to start a family with, you had better say that after you have gone everywhere you can go, after you have put in all of the effort that you possibly can, and then you despairingly say, I cannot find a woman. Have you ever gone to any religious community? If you're not part of a religious community, become part of a religious community. If you're atheist, too bad, stop being one. Because besides for the fact that you're just completely wrong, in religious communities, you will find all of these women that you're looking for. Have you gone to the Bible Belt? Have you gone to a goddamn library? Have you gone anywhere where you'll find women who aren't skanks? If you haven't seriously made any search, shut up. In short, if the only purpose that you're chasing is money and doing things for yourself that make you personally happy, and you're willing to abandon your bloodline that your ancestors put blood, sweat, tears, and legitimately, in many cases, gave up their lives in order to continue because you are not willing to take on any risk whatsoever and are not willing to put in the effort to go out and look for a woman that's actually worth starting a family with, I don't want to hear you call yourself a real man. Because a real man does not give up on his legacy unless there is no option he can possibly look from anywhere. And even in this day and age, even if all of the doom scrollers and naysayers say that it is, that's simply not the case.